Thank you for joining the Power of the Innovation Mindset. I'm really delighted today to be talking with Matt from Paragon One. We're going to have Matt introduce himself in just a moment. But as you know, when we talk about innovation, it really has to emanate from a passion for problem solving, an insatiable curiosity, and embracing of change. And at the heart of it, and at the heart of that mindset, is this idea of observing a problem in its natural habitat. And I can tell you, as somebody who's been in education for the last 13 years at the undergraduate, graduate, and even postgraduate professional executive education level, I really have witnessed the fact that our educational system today, particularly for undergrads, is not really serving the needs of the population that it was designed to serve. And so, because of this, it's very much ripe for disruption, transformation. And so, when I learned about Paragon One and met with Matt and was invited to join the advisory board, I was really delighted because this is an area that I have a lot of personal passion and interest in. And as I've learned more about the Paragon One business model, the great work that they're doing on behalf of sponsor companies, certainly helping students, and now their move toward more university-based partnerships, I think is exactly the type of solution set and antidote that this industry, education as an industry needs. And so I'm just really delighted that we can have this conversation with you today. So Matt, welcome, the founder and the CEO of Paragon One. And I just really love the story of your background and Paragon One's background. And so I'd love for you to share it in your own words with our audience.
Thank you, Lorraine. Appreciate the time being here to talk with you. I'm an engineer by training. When I was at MIT as an undergrad, they had what was called an externship program where you got matched with alumni for about 4 or 5 weeks to work together. And one of my externships got canceled a week before it was supposed to start because the manager there said, turns out we don't actually have the resources or the team to support you to come in and do this work. And that was a huge disappointment because, you only get so many of these externship opportunities when you're in college to build up your resume. And fast forward to my first job out of college when I was a banking analyst at Morgan Stanley, I actually got tendinitis in my hands from typing too much the first year I was on the job. And at first I thought, well, I can't do anything. But luckily, there was a VP in my group who asked if I could come and basically tutor and mentor the interns that we had at that time. And so over a course of a few months, they became so good at what they did because they literally had an employee who had nothing else to do but sit behind them, train them, and coach them on how to do their internship better, that they all got full-time job offers to come back into that group, which was pretty rare for 100% to get asked back. Mm-hmm. And so I thought about these two problems from both the student side and the company side. One, that it's a chicken and egg problem to try to get work experience on your resume while you're going through and trying to get your community college degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree. And second is if you're on the other side as an employee at a company, oftentimes you tend to have an adverse reaction when someone says, interns are here. You might think, oh, great, I've got to think of something to do to give them. I'm busy right now. Here, work on this for a day. I'll come back and think of something else to give you. And that's not because people don't want to support young people and give them opportunity. It's because everyone's busy with their full-time jobs. So how are you going to take the time to then train somebody who's then going to leave after a few months and wonder if that ROI was worth it? So those two experiences is what led many years later, after I co-founded another startup in the e-commerce space, to having the idea for Paragon One, originally to coach students on getting jobs and internships, and then eventually to launch what we call now the Externship. And can tell you more about that, but that's essentially the background.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you observed and experienced the problem. And I think that for entrepreneurs, for anybody starting up any kind of entity, that firsthand experience with the problem just gives you tremendous credibility, number one, but you are a student of it. And so I think that you're also much more determined around trying to find the right solution, right? Because you had an opportunity to see what worked, what didn't work, and land on some of the improvements that you saw were necessary. Before we go into the story on Paragon, because I definitely want you to talk about how Paragon 1 was created, maybe just for our audience, if you could define externship for us, because I know you use the word very frequently, but it was actually a new term to me. When I joined Paragon 1, I wasn't familiar with the term externship.
Yeah, so it's not a very well-defined term. It's used in certain industries historically, like nursing or law, usually to mean kind of a short-term experience over a few weeks. We've gotten really crystal clear, and we've defined externship as it's a learning integrated work experience, meaning you're working on a project, but you're also learning. It's education at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's designed by a group of experts who come from industry. And it allows a cohort of students to work on a project over a few weeks, flexibly from anywhere in the world, while also earning a credential. And historically, that's been a credential from the company. So companies we work with, like PwC, National Geographic, Home Depot, and so forth, the students will get a certificate issued from them through a program called Accreditable on LinkedIn. And in the future, and we're actually starting to do this already now with many of our students, they're beginning to get academic credit at schools and institutions. And that's where we see the future.
Yeah, and I know we want to get into the aspects of the educational system that are, let's just say, not serving the population in the way they need to, and some of the new model aspects that you're working on in this transformation. So why don't we talk about that in just a moment? But I think that the founding of Paragon 1 is interesting, and if you could just share a little bit about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really inspired. Initially I mentioned we were a career coaching product. We actually went through Y Combinator with that idea, where sort of this Kaplan Princeton review, but instead of helping you get coaching to get into college, it was, let's help you build the skill sets and knowledge to apply for a job, get a job, do well at the interview. What we learned through that was, students, coaching's great, but students would then take that coaching and say, well, I still am struggling to do well in the interview because I don't have experience on my resume yet. So I don't have that confidence to kind of tell a story about how I've applied myself in the real world. And I'm not getting the inbounds or the interest for interviews because, again, my resume is empty. And so we thought, what if we could actually deliver the real experience? And that's what led to us pivoting. And originally we called it virtual internship. And then we learned, okay, some large companies have internship programs. So let's just, but also it wasn't an internship. Like an internship is just a short-term work experience where you go into an office, or even if you're remote, it's kind of a one-on-one experience. In this case, we wanted to bring a cohort of students together. And it started to look more and more like an experience you'd have in an online classroom setting. We have a fantastic team that supports our students. We have curriculum development, we have assessment, and then we work with the companies to make sure that they aren't having to do all this stuff. Right? They just can show up, tell us what the project is they want to achieve, and then do the fun stuff with the students, like show up on a webinar with a group, answer questions, talk about the vision of the company. So that's what we eventually said, let's call this a new category. And that's where we landed on externship.
And how did you come up with the name Paragon 1?
Well, so, Paragon means excellence. And, you always like to have kind of a fancy, cool reason for how you start a company name. But Paragon.com was taken. And so, Paragon 1 just sounded like a cool name that, represented excellence. And so, we've been using it up to this point, and just we have some exciting developments coming next quarter in that area, but we'll announce those after the new year.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, so let's get into the current state of the educational system, the model you've talked about to some extent, the way it maybe isn't servicing students to find jobs, to have experience, that sort of thing, and then aspects of the new model that you wanted to create. But anything more that you think our audience should know about the current infrastructure, the current system, and where the gaps are?
Well, higher education was really constructed around this concept of supporting research, right? Research institutions. So, how many PhDs can you produce? And if you don't make it all the way there, we're going to weed you out. We'll give you a consolation prize along the way. So you get a bachelor's degree, you get a master's degree, and so forth. And then there wasn't a lot of thought put into, well, if I'm not going to make it all the way, how should that degree be valuable in the real world? And we've gotten to a point now where, especially post-COVID, the ROI of universities and colleges are being called into question. You've actually got Gen Z and younger people starting to opt out of universities. And while I don't declare the degree dead by any stretch yet, you're seeing it being questioned. And so if something is not done right now to fix that, you're going to see a slow, long, kind of painful slide from most institutions. And so there's been this other side of the equation. Now there's this movement around skills-based hiring, alternative credentials, kind of saying, look, let's opt out of this traditional academic degree and prove our skill sets through courses, credentialing programs, things like Coursera certificates. And, I always say nobody got hired from taking a Coursera certificate, right? Or doing these alternative certificate programs in and of themselves. They're still valuable. They're very valuable. But people get hired because of real work experience, right? The majority of a LinkedIn profile, the majority of your resume is for professional experience. And so no matter what anyone tells you, that's what's going to win at the end of the day. And so I think universities have a chance to integrate experience more and more. And some you hear their co-op programs here and there. There's one-off things happening, but as like a system to embrace industry, bring that into the classroom, that's what's needed.
Okay. And maybe we can talk about it a bit from, well, we got a two-sided market here, actually a three-sided market. So maybe we'll just stay on the students for a moment. And, you're absolutely right. I coach and mentor students at the undergraduate and graduate level. And particularly if they're looking to get a first-time job, or maybe sometimes they're career switchers. They've gotten an undergraduate degree. They've been out there for a year or two, but now they finally found out that they really love, a different field. And it's really difficult. You're absolutely right. The thing that they'll say to me is, well, I just don't have any experience to put on my resume. And what can I do in order to close that gap? So what are some of the things that students can do to close that experience gap? And maybe how are the programs at Paragon One designed so that you can put something compelling on your resume?
Yeah, well, look, if you happen to go to a school or an institution that has put a lot of thought and effort into this, there'll be opportunities right in front of you. If you're, again, fortunate enough to have done that. I was able to go to an institution that had this externship program and had a lot of industry connections. But, even just told you the example, even still, there was a situation where that disappeared because of this issue with resource. You might be at a co-op program. Again, small number of universities like Northeastern, Drexel offer that. And then I would say going out and getting the summer internship by just, finding opportunities, cold emailing, messaging on LinkedIn, doing that kind of hard work to go out and get in front of people and tell them what you're passionate about. We've had interns within Paragon One that we've hired because they cold emailed me and got my attention. So those are just basic things. Now, Of course, I also say go and apply for an externship because they're designed to try to accept as many students as we can. And there are externships across a range of categories at Paragon One, from the focus on skill sets like data, product discovery, finance, consulting, marketing. We're trying to do a lot more to integrate teaching prompting, kind of very basic prompt engineering, and just leveraging generative AI tools. So I would just, encourage everyone to go and take a look at an externship, and then use the time that you have during school while you're working. You can do an externship fit around your schedule. We've designed it where it might take 1 or 2 hours, maybe on average 1 hour a week of live time, and the rest of that time you can work on your own schedule.
And then the students are able to do their work online. They have a manager through Paragon One. The communication back with the sponsor is very easy and seamless. They get the coaching and guidance that they need to make sure that their deliverables are done properly. And then they get the opportunity to put this experience on their resume with very established brands, I might say, based on the relationships that you have. So maybe just toggling over on the sponsor side and some of the big industry icons that you've been able to work with and place the externships with. Maybe talk a little bit about what is it the sponsors are looking for and how have you been able to meet those needs. And I'm guilty as charged of being one of those individuals who's been said, Lorraine, I've got great news for you. You have some internships coming in. And me saying, oh my gosh, where am I going to fit in? First of all, developing the program and then managing and mentoring and coaching internships so that they actually have a valuable experience. So I completely appreciate the fact that you make this turnkey and you take all of the pressure off of the industry leaders, because I think they have a lot of competencies, but probably that is not one of them. At least it wasn't for me.
I think everyone's been there at some point, and you have that feeling of guilt because you do want to do that, but time constraints or such. So so on your question of who we work with, we've been very fortunate to work with brands like PwC, National Geographic, the Nature Conservancy, Home Depot, Beats by Dre, Hugo Boss, AT&T, HSBC, Macquarie Group. So a lot of fantastic brands. They work with us for different reasons. We work with different divisions, different teams. So in some cases, it might be that they have recruiting goals. They have early talent recruiting goals, and they want to reach a more diverse population of student talent, introduce their brand to them, and do more than just, again, go to a career fair, which, sometimes there might be a hiring manager there, but oftentimes it might be, HR staff and handing out pamphlets, kind of giving the spiel to students. Students want to engage with brands where they feel like they're getting a taste for what it's like to work there, right? That's what they're excited to do. They want to connect in some way. They want to feel like they're getting a sense for what is the work. So it's this alternative way to engage talent for a recruiting funnel, to build your employer brand. And some of our companies have very explicit corporate social responsibility goals that they're trying to hit. They want to upskill or train an underrepresented or underserved student population, or some companies have innovation goals, and they specifically want to engage Gen Z young talent on those innovation goals. They might be trying to test a new product, get insights on a new product, learn kind of the marketing language that students are using when they think about consumer brands or social media brands. And so these are kind of the range of topics that we work with companies on, whether it's impact goals or whether they have, again, insights, product discovery goals that they want to reach.
Matt, that idea of helping out with market research and getting the voice of the customer from that population that you mentioned, that just seems like a great use case for so many companies that are trying to reach a certain generation. What is the student's experience with that? Do they also derive benefit from that kind of scenario?
Yeah, so our goal is, how do you introduce students not just to the fun, flashy careers that maybe they've heard of, but how do you build skill sets that they can then go and market for companies? So if you think about concepts like customer discovery, product discovery, driving market insights, I mean, pretty much every company needs to do this, right? You have a customer, there's a market that you're trying to enter or expand in. You need to really understand that customer deeply. And if you're going to launch a new product or you're going to evolve or expand a product that you're building, you don't want to waste a lot of time trying to guess what you should be doing. You want to deeply understand that market and that customer. And so students learn skill sets around, how do I actually, first of all, analyze and research a market? How do I, one very specific example I'll give you is we have a venture capital deal sourcing externship that we've done with a number of venture capital and private equity firms. And students there, they have to figure out, okay, well, I need to go and assess and find startups that might be good to pitch to the venture capital firm. So I need to, first of all, learn about markets in a deep way. I then need to go and how do I analyze companies to know their competitive situation, what their product is, how to assess that product, the customers that product may be serving. And then alongside that, can I leverage tools to make me more efficient, more effective? Can I leverage generative AI to not just help me do the research, but analyze that, synthesize that, and present that in a way that makes sense? And so the idea is, as a student, how can I supercharge my capability to now go be more competitive in the market?
Excellent. That's a great example. And then I think the third side of this three-sided market, which is very exciting and an opportunity for growth and increased value that Paragon One is providing, is on the university side. So I'd love for you to share, particularly with anybody from universities who might be joining us on this meeting, how is that program going to work?
Yeah, well, when we first launched and started testing out the externships, we envisioned that one day we would be offering partnership with universities. We wanted to spend a few years to build up the company network, really prove out that we're delivering value to students, and we've done that. So, this year we're going to be serving close to 9,000 students with externships that will be enrolling across dozens of different programs. And so now we're at a place where we can actually go and partner with universities and higher education to help students more systematically get course credit at their institutions by doing an externship. And we've already been doing this today, but it happens on an individual basis. So a student can come to an externship, they can then take our materials, go to their academic advisor and say, hey, I'd like to get elective credit, or if this maybe fits in with some other course that they were trying to get credit for. Going forward, though, we want to work in partnership with universities. And we actually have one university that we'll be announcing in the new year that we have a partnership with, who will be basically offering course credit from their university for students who get externships, who they can then take that and transfer it to a school that they are attending. And our goal is to do this with more and more universities as we get in to the new year.
Yeah, no, I really love that idea of being able to take the experience that they're going to get with on-the-job training, so to speak, and being able to apply that as a credit to their degree. I mean, I think one of the things that we can do in order to address the cost impediments to an education is to try to find surrogates or replacements for these credits. And at the same time, they get the benefit of the experience that they actually want to put on their resume. So instead of just having a static course that they're paying for, they get the credit and they also get the experience. So to me, it definitely seems like a win-win. And I would imagine that universities would be very supportive of this, right?
Yeah. So if you asked me this 5 or 10 years ago, I would have said it might be challenging because universities have, there are systems in place. There's sort of this set expectation around academic goals and academic requirements. But now, from what I mentioned before, you're seeing enrollments decline at a lot of universities. This question of ROI is coming up, and students and families, there's only so many things that they're really looking for from a university. And one of the big ones is, what are my prospects for landing a job and figuring out a career, right? And then going and actually landing that initial job. And as I mentioned before, yes, if you go to, one of these elite institutions, obviously that's going to, attract attention. But, barring that, you still really need to fill out your resume when you're graduating. You need to have experiences. And so imagine now as a university, if I am offering accredited externship courses to my students or allowing them to do it either by transferring them in or because I'm the one crediting the course directly, my students, as they go through and get their degree, they're also simultaneously, they're taking courses, but they're also adding to their resume as they do externships. So now when I graduate, I could have done an externship at least a semester maybe. So I could have eight externship experiences on my resume. I mean, you're going to obviously have far more employers coming to interview you than if you graduate with your degree and you didn't have anything, or even, maybe you eked a junior, summer after your junior year internship out. It's just going to change the game. And so I think university leaders are starting to recognize this. They want to do something different. And that's where we want to partner and help them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, similarly to the way that Paragon One takes out all the friction in the relationship with the sponsor to make hosting the externship very seamless, you're playing that same role with the universities, right? You're setting up the infrastructure, the administration for it, sourcing the externship experience, helping them work through the credit hours. So you're really almost allowing them to outsource this to a very established partner who's going to have visibility into a lot of opportunities and access to a lot of students potentially, as you said, even maybe transferring into a university from some other place or location.
Yeah, we'll partner very closely with them on making sure we're meeting their academic requirements, the standards, so the setup process, we're sharing, how are we integrating with their systems on the back end to share that information. So, but at the end of the day, then it's turnkey, right? So as students go through an externship program and we assess according to that institution's grading rubric, their academic advisors, their staff can see that happening and be able to very easily approve that in a way that isn't burdensome on their teams.
Yeah, no. And Matt, just to confirm again for our audience, your program is global, correct? You have students international.
Yep.
Yeah,
we have students from over 100 countries.
Yeah, F1 visa students, that would be an F1 visa student in the US. You also are able to place externships with F1 visa students. So again, particularly a role that I have right now in an educational institution, we have a lot of F1 visa students. And this is one of the top concerns coming into the US and getting a graduate degree is the period of time which you have to land a job or needing to go back to your home country. And clearly the first step is just getting an internship or an externship so that you have the experience and you have the exposure to the company. So I can see where it's really helping to address a critical problem in that domain.
Absolutely.
So Matt, as we've been speaking, a couple questions have come in. So maybe I'll go ahead and pose one of them to you in the last couple minutes that we have here before we wrap. One of the questions is, would you work with smaller companies as well? Because you talked about some really large name brands like Home Depot and HSBC that may not need a whole cohort of students, but just a few. So I think somebody here has a small company would be interested in knowing, would you be able to service their needs as well?
Yeah, this is actually a question we get a lot when we introduce what the externship is to companies. So you can think of the externship program as like this large school in effect, where we have thousands of students who we will sign up to go through these, I hesitate to say classes because it is based on real work experiences. So it's different from an internship where if you say, hey, I just need, 2 or 3 students to come and work on a project, it's different from that because if you wanted to work one-on-one closely with a student, this wouldn't be for that. But if you said, hey, I have a project where I need to understand a market deeply. I need to go out and validate customers. I need to go out and maybe even test a new landing page or products or ideas, whatever is that. And that means you actually also not just need to do analytical and research work and data analysis, but you have to go out and actually talk to people. Right? And so to do that well, you need to talk to a lot of people, a lot of prospective customers, users, whoever those are. That's actually what this works well for, because our students are able to go out, get in the field, learn, talk to real customers, and then do that work behind the scenes with generative AI or whatever to build the final output and present that. So that's what this works really well for. And it's just a slightly different thing, but it depends on the project that you have.
Okay, but a smaller cohort, as long as it's not the one-on-one training them for a particular role and it lends itself to a group project.
Yeah, so our cohorts will typically be between, call it 25 and 50 is sort of the base. Now, we've been running some programs now, and as we get into next year, we're going to be doing this more and more. We've done some as big as 500 students in a cohort. So again, when people hear that, they're like, no, I can't, But remember, that's what we manage that group. And so it's almost like you're a visiting lecturer. You're showing up at a class and you're kind of sharing your insights, answering some questions. You might come back in a couple of weeks, do it again. You might do that, say 3 times. And at the end, you see the final presentations that we've curated. So, and then we're behind the scenes working with the students, training them, answering questions, making sure that, they're supported to reach that goal.
Yeah, terrific. One more question, and then we'll wrap up because we're at the bottom of the hour. One of our listeners said that they really appreciate what you said about how people get hired because of real work experience on their resumes, not certifications. The question is, what's the first step universities can take to better help their students get that experience? It sounds like they need to sign up with Paragon 1 for the externship program is one of the answers there. But what's your answer to that, Matt?
But yeah, that's what we're hoping. And we're starting to do that now. But I think just more philosophically, first of all, there are some universities out there where university leaders or departments get this and they're putting a lot of work into it. There's some people, I've seen roles out there like head of corporate partnerships. But, I think it's also philosophically, everyone in the school has to be responsible for this, right? It's leadership, department heads, professors, right, as well. They should be spending time building relationships with industry so students know that they have connections, right? They should also be able to work with universities. I mean, some classrooms will do this where they'll have a capstone project. Business schools tend to do this a little bit more, where they'll have a capstone project and they'll go and work with a company or a team to do that. I think just having that philosophy across the design of curriculum and remembering that just teaching students these isolated concepts in a vacuum, writing stuff on a chalkboard and expecting students to kind of grasp a lot of these concepts that are very abstract if they've never worked in the real world before, or many times just seem theoretical and like, well, this is interesting, but where am I going to apply that? Thinking constantly about where you integrate that, that just has to be a philosophical change that starts with leadership.
Yeah. Okay. And one final question, which I think is going to allow you to close this out nicely, and maybe you can give us the Paragon 1 website. But the question is, how can an individual student find opportunities to be included in an externship?
Yeah. So go to paragon1.com, paragonone.com. And you'll see, if you're a student, where you can go and click through and apply to externships, and you'll see all of the externships that we have available at any time. We have a bunch that are going to be launching in the new year. So it's a great time to be applying.
Okay, terrific. And then they'll go through some sort of an interview process internally with Paragon 1.
Yeah.
Go through
so
the
short application. We put a lot of emphasis on video interview. Recorded video interviews, so you can really tell your story. We do not look for tradition. We do not put a lot of weight on things like GPA or what experience you already have. Right, that's kind of the point here. We look for passion. We look for determination. Are you someone that's going to commit to the program and actually try to finish it? Right, because we have people to help and support, but are you going to put that effort in? Can you actually try to finish the program? And is it something that you're curious about? You're genuinely curious about?
perfect way to close out, getting back to the curiosity and just natural interest and a problem solving orientation. So I really appreciate that, Matt. And it's been a terrific discussion. And I guess just to close out, what is the one thing that you want our audience to take away about Paragon One? What's the one message that you want to leave them with?
Just that we're the externship that we've designed, this concept of the externship. It's completely new. It's not work. It's not only work. It's not only learning. It's literally both at the same time. It's designed to be both. And so I believe that there's a world where both should be existing. That doesn't happen right now. Everything's isolated. And so we're looking for partners, whether that's excited students, universities, company partners that want to be a part of this movement, because it really is going to shape the next decade, I believe.
Yes. Well, Matt, thank you for a terrific conversation. I'm all for shaping and forming education in a way that can meet the needs of the students. So thank you for everything that you're doing at Paragon One. Everybody check them out, paragon1.com. And particularly for students, I think you'll see the process for registering and what the vetting process is for getting matched with an externship. So thank you, Matt. And we'll talk with you later.
Thank you, Lorraine.